Hey, welcome everyone. This is Mind Your Own Business. My name is Pablo, and thanks for listening. All right, thank you everybody. Welcome back to Mind Your Own Business. I have Robin Treasure here with me today. She's a sales coach, leader, author. I would love to talk about her book, and but as always, as a way of introduction, Robin, who do you help, or what are you most passionate about?
Yeah, well, first of all, Pablo, thank you so much for having me on. So, who do I help? I train sales teams. I train teams of salespeople who may be struggling with low close rates or long sales cycles or declining growth rates. And I help teams by giving them an actual framework that they can use in their discoveries to make their efforts a lot more effective. I also work individually with individual contributors as their coach to help them implement the framework and then also overcome a lot of the obstacles, including emotional obstacles that happen when you're in sales. So that's what I do.
And we were just talking about you being certified as in GAP. I'm very curious to know about that, if that's okay. A little more about what those techniques are and like actionable, like yeah, tactics or not tactics, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, gap selling is a problem centric and buyer centric way of conducting sales. And if you think about it, even for those of us who are very empathetic and very can connect easily with others, at the end of the day, we all tend to be very product centric. And what that means is that by default, even if it's with great intention and great passion, we want to tell people all about our product and why it's so great and why it can help you, right? The reality is, no one cares. No one cares about you or your product. What they're concerned with, especially in a business environment, of course, is that they've got problems that need to be resolved. And especially when you are a real expert in your product, maybe you come from a technical background, you understand the features and the technical features and benefits of your product. Even if it's the most amazing product in the world, it's going to fall on deaf ears, pardon me, until you shift your perspective and your language to addressing the problems that the buyer is currently experiencing in their world.
So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a quick summary of it. Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say is not focusing on more like that much on myself, but on the person, like on you as the buyer. So buyer centric. It's not about me. It's about you. It's about your problems, not about my product.
Yes. Exactly. And when we say problems, it goes far beyond just the specific technical problems that the buyer may be experiencing in that moment. It is about the business problems that are happening. That, and even the buyer themselves may not connect the dots between the business problems that they have and the technical problem at that moment, such as, a glitchy software program, as a very concrete example. The glitchy software program is actually creating downstream effects within the business that are far reaching and go far beyond the technical problem of glitchy software. So, but again, the buyer themselves may not be aware of the connection between the two, really connecting the dots, until you as a seller come in with your expertise and your perspective and your curiosity to lean into what's happening in that particular buyer's world. Once you do that and you really build up your own credibility by asking the right questions to really understand what's going on with the buyer and to help connect the dots in their world, that's when you're able to lead the sale in a much more authentic and service oriented way.
And I have to ask, like, how do you? So you mentioned being curious, having curious mind. Is that the way to unlock that? Is, I'm assuming, having great questions, like understanding and.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I have to say that curiosity is something that it's a trait I've always known is really important in sales. And in fact, in my book, Heart Powered Sales, which we can talk about a little bit later, I talk about what I think are the new ABCs. Instead of always be closing, one is always be connecting, and another is always be curious. So curiosity is really paramount. I wrote the book before I encountered gap selling. And as you mentioned earlier, and as I've kind of alluded to, I'm now a certified partner trainer with gap selling. Gap selling is what really opened my eyes to the true meaning of curiosity. Because when you really think about it, there's so many things that we assume about a buyer's world or that we don't even bother to understand. So we really need to lean into curiosity, meaning understanding really, what are all the different factors and elements and challenges in that buyer's world. The best way to do that is to become curious and to keep leaning in, to keep understanding more, seek to understand.
I have a question for that. Maybe I don't know. This is me being ignorant, but how can you train someone to be more curious? But I think you just give a hint, which is like thinking maybe about all the things, all the moving components that might happen. But I'm sure you have a better answer to that. How do you train someone to be more curious?
What I've found is actually to start to imagine before you even speak with your buyer, to start to imagine their world, to start to paint a picture, almost like imagine you've got a canvas and you've got a paint by numbers, kit, and there are different colors that you need to fill in different areas. The more you start to imagine their world, the more you start to understand how much you don't know yet. And therefore, that's how you can become curious. When I started learning gap selling and started applying the framework, I'll tell you, I fell flat on my face. It does not, it's quite simple in concept. It's quite difficult to really master. So even I, who had always preached, always be curious, I hadn't really understood how challenging that can be because of the number of assumptions that we make unconsciously. So we assume that, we know how many people are, on a team in a given day. We know how, just any number of things in their environment. We just assume, we make assumptions. But when you really start to try to create a picture for yourself, like a canvas and having a blank canvas, then you become aware of how little you understand, including, what's their revenue like? What is the trend in the past with their revenue growth or decline? What has their hiring been like? Is the team growing or is it contracting? How well are they achieving their business objectives in terms of the actual deliverables that they promise to their clientele? All of those things need to be unearthed. And I'm not saying that you need to interrogate them. It needs to be done in a very tactful way, right? And piece by piece, and maybe you don't get everything in one discovery. But that's how you can really start to do that. So again, imagining a blank canvas and you have to paint a complete picture, that's when you realize how little you actually know. And now you know what can help guide you with your discovery.
And I would even say that this helps for life, not just in like in sales 100%, but also in life. Sometimes you just know so much and you assume your partner, your colleague, the people you work with know this or don't know that or what have you. And so it's incredible how much you're assuming all day long, and so if you just ask a couple of questions, the relationships kind of fall in place. So, but don't
Yeah.
make it about, I don't want to, make it about that.
Yeah.
um I was
Yeah.
meaning to ask about, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to add one more thing too, because there's another piece to the puzzle that really helps to guide your discovery and how you can uncover what's going on in the buyer's world. And that's to have what we call in gap selling terms your problem identification chart. And that is where you start to identify the business problems in your buyer's world that you can help address and solve by virtue of providing the technical product or service that you provide. So once you have that problem identification chart, and there's a lot more that you can, people can contact me afterwards to understand exactly what that means, but that is your navigation tool to help you anticipate some of the problems that your buyer might be experiencing, and now you know what to look for in your discovery to understand if that particular buyer is actually experiencing those problems.
Okay. So it all like goes full circle also with what you're saying. And I'm curious, like, so you wrote the book first. Like, did anything changed from the book to gap selling? Or did they complement and you just like build like a very solid sales, like?
So they really complement each other. The book that I wrote, which is entitled Heart Powered Sales, and then the gap selling method, they really complement each other. And yes, I wrote my book first before I had encountered gap selling. And in my book, I share a lot of the things that I was doing intuitively. In fact, the subtitle of my book is Grow Your Sales Exponentially with Emotional Intelligence and Intuition. Emotional intelligence and intuition are two really key, vital pieces in sales that I also think aren't discussed often enough. And emotional intelligence gives you the ability to manage your own emotions, which of course we've got, you can encounter a lot of fear, a lot of scarcity, a lot of self-doubt when you're in sales, right? So emotional intelligence helps you to keep those in check. And then emotional intelligence also helps you to be keyed into or emotionally attuned to what your buyer is experiencing so that you can demonstrate that empathy and understanding. And then intuition also gives you that turn-by-turn guidance that we're lacking at any given moment if we only use our logical minds. So those are the key pieces that enabled me to be a successful B2B seller. But the truth is, there was a missing piece, and the missing piece was the actual framework to use in discoveries. And that's when I encountered gap selling and the problem-centric methodology that it entails. And then for me, it was like all the lights came on. Now it all made sense.
And because I agree, I couldn't agree more with intuition and emotional intelligence to play a big part in sales. And I would, invite everybody to just get the book and just read it. But so I'm curious also, like how can you train that in your day-to-day or even in sales? Because if you go to LinkedIn, you can see the tactics, like this is the best open for the cold call, or this is the best subject line for an email, or this is the best question to ask your prospect. But they don't talk that much about like the EQ or emotional intelligence part of it. So I'm very curious to know, like, is there a framework for that, or how do you teach that, or how do you even spot yourself? Can you catch yourself in those moments so you can just practice those to become better at that more, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's not taught very much. It's not talked about very much, but your EQ is so important and it really will give you a leg up in terms of, again, managing your own emotions, being attuned to others, and therefore forming those more authentic connections and really help being able to serve in a very powerful and meaningful way. There's one key word to help you with EQ, and that's awareness. So just paying attention, noting and even labeling what it is that you are feeling, and then in order to understand and be aware of what someone else is feeling, what your buyer, whoever you're speaking to, you have to pay attention to nonverbal cues too. Those are so important. And so, when you're listening not just with your ears, which includes tone, what is the tone that they're using, but you're also listening with your eyes in the sense that you're observing body language. You're observing with your heart, which means you're actually just kind of like feeling their energy. And thank goodness, I think it's very possible to do that even virtually, on a video call. I think you can still feel someone's energy. And so you just kind of avail yourself of all of your senses and even your somatic intelligence, which means your body. What's going on in your own body in terms of your physical sensations? Are you tight in your gut? Are you tight in your shoulders? Are you feeling relaxed? All of those things really matter, and they give you clues that can help you to hone your emotional intelligence.
And then on top of that, if you apply the gap selling approach, you just have all the toolkits to be great at sales.
Yes. That's exactly right. I mean, once you have that gap selling framework, you know what you're looking for. You know how to approach your discovery. And of course, there's no script, right? And so you still have to go work intuitively with what is most appropriate in that moment in the conversation. But you have a framework. You know what business problems you're looking for. You know where you're kind of leading the conversation because you've got your compass and your GPS with your framework and then also with your intuition. Now you put all those pieces together. You use your EQ to really form that empathetic connection, and then you can become unstoppable.
Oh, I love that. And I want to, again, invite people to see your work, maybe even to reach out to you if they have questions. But also, and I also want to pivot maybe the conversation to a bit of leadership and company culture, because that's also important, especially in sales. Sales can be, if led untouched, can be a very toxic environment and whatnot. So what's your considerations when it comes to leadership? Do you see any flaws, any things we're doing wrong as teams today that could be changed?
Yeah, so I've been giving this some thought, knowing that we were going to be speaking about this today. And, in my mind, there are 4 key problem areas in terms of culture and leadership within sales. The first one is it's very metrics driven. Now, metrics are a good thing. They are a good thing. But the question is, what are you measuring? And as a result of what you're measuring, what behaviors are you encouraging? So in the sales world, activities are measured a lot. How many meetings did you schedule? How many phone calls did you make? Those again are important. We need to be in action. We can't just sit back and wait for things to happen. But at the same time, what about the quality of those meetings? Are we just encouraging people to log useless things in their CRM to show that they're busy, to show that they're working? Or can we shift from, I like to make the distinction between activities versus actions. Activities are just things that you kind of end up doing to look busy, to keep busy. Whereas action it indicates or implies more intention. Have a clear intention with every outreach that you make and with every meeting that you have. Have a clear intention and clarity around what you're hoping to achieve in that meeting, and what the next step is going to be. So metrics and activity, which metrics are we measuring, right? The next problem that I see is within leadership, understandably so, there's a lot of hiding and a lack of vulnerability. And that's because people are afraid to show that they don't know what they don't know. And they're afraid of being called out. They're afraid of being exposed. Often, top performers are promoted into leadership. They're not given any leadership training. So they're actually afraid to show what they don't know. And they may kind of default into still performing an individual contributor role, but sort of doing that on top of another individual contributor rather than helping lift that individual contributor up. So those are some problems that I see in terms of culture and leadership. And then there's also the pressure, especially mid-level managers have so much pressure from above and from below. And, it's no wonder that there's a lot of burnout at that level. And again, that lack of vulnerability, and that's just not healthy for anyone. Another thing that I see is now within sellers as well. So it's not just leadership. I mean, I believe that individual contributors also need to take ownership and responsibility. And what they can do in that regard is with their own mindset. What is our mindset? Often it's fear and scarcity when you're a seller, because you've got a lot of pressure on you. You have a quota to achieve. There's competition with your team. You're competing against yourself. If you did really well last year, that means you need to work even harder this year, right? So unfortunately, that produces a mindset of fear and scarcity. And so that's something that we all need to work on shifting. And then the final piece that I see is there isn't enough sales training. There's not enough sales training. A lot of people listening may think, well, no, I do get training. My company provides training. But is it product training or is it sales training? There's a big difference. We do need to know our products. We do need to understand the features and benefits, the technical specs, all of that. But we also need to know how to sell. And how to sell is actually how you serve and how you connect and how you understand your buyer. And we don't get enough of that with current culture as it is.
And I agree with all of them. And then the consequence of that is fear makes an underperforming team, which leads to not, again, sounds obvious, but dropping the ball, so to speak, if you will, not being there for others, just having that closed mindset, if you will, as well. And so there goes the culture, and then there goes the team as well. If you train the team for sales, have vulnerability, have a switch in that mindset, and have metrics that are valuable for the people behind the activities, I think that's a good framework to change the culture, leadership to a high achievement, to a team of high achievers. Yeah, no, that's great. I just to come to an end here, Robin, you've been so generous with the time and your expertise. I'll make sure to add all the links to the show notes. But any last comments or thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so first of all, I would love it if people connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to be pretty active on LinkedIn, so I'd love if people follow me or send me a connection request there. People can also go to robintreasure.com to find out about the different team trainings that I offer. So that's how to connect with me. And I guess I would just share this final thought, which is I truly believe that, first of all, sales is such a great platform for personal growth, for us to evolve as individuals and to evolve with one another collectively. Um, and I think that the best way to do that is just to connect to your heart. When you connect to your heart, you open yourself up to more guidance from from who knows where, right? But it's your intuitive guidance that you can connect to by connecting to your heart. And then by connecting to your heart, you connect better to other people. That's how you form those empathetic, strong connections. And that's how we can all evolve as people.
Yeah, on that same note, I read somewhere not too long ago how the heart gives like a ton of information back to the brain more than the brain to the heart. The information the brain gives to the heart is just to beat, just to move, right? To pump.
Yes.
Versus the heart and the gut, they send information up, which is like this is all this to say it's not, spirituality is not, it's science, it's backed by science, how actually the conversation between the heart and the gut in the brain can actually gives you like superpowers. In this case, if you're in sales, empathy, discovery, pain discovery, uh, emotional intelligence, and I'm missing so many more that can help you grow as a professional and as an individual. So I couldn't agree more with that
That's
statement.
so true. Yeah. And in fact, the Heart Math Institute does a lot of research. I think, yeah, it
Yes.
sounds like you've read their
Yes.
work. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're amazing. And
they
and
are.
so yes, their scientific research has shown just how powerful the heart is. And so like you said, the heart will give more signals to the brain than vice versa. And also the electromagnetic field of the heart is 100 times stronger than that of the brain. So when you think of connecting to someone else and feeling their energy, that comes from the heart. And so, that just shows how much more we all need to be connected to and aware of our own heart and our heart energy and our ability to connect with others in that way.
I love that work, and I can't wait to take a look at your book so I can just connect the heart, all the knowledge from this science into sales so I can perform better and actually be happier, reduce burnout, anxiety, and all those feelings that can be there if left untouched, unaddressed. So, Robin, no, it was a pleasure meeting you, having you here, listening to you, and I can't wait to have this again. I'll leave the links in the show notes again for everybody to reach out to you. And no, thank you for
Sounds so great. Thank you so much, Pablo. Thank you.